So let's talk about these new age verification laws. What starts out as a pretty reasonable idea, hey, let's protect kids online, well, it quickly spirals into something much, much bigger. We're talking about a huge debate over surveillance, control, and whether we can even trust our own devices anymore.
And I bet you are thinking this was all just about websites, right? Like maybe for social media or some adult sites. And honestly, that's a totally fair assumption to make. But the reality, it's expanded way beyond your web browser, burrowing right into the heart of the devices we use every single day.
Okay, so let's get right into it. The whole battleground has shifted. We're not talking about website pop-ups anymore. We are now talking about laws that demand age verification at the operating system level. Think about it like this. Instead of a bouncer at the door of one club, they're putting a checkpoint at the entrance to the entire city. And look at how wide this net is cast. This isn't just a headache for Apple and Google. The way these laws are written, they pull in pretty much every major OS out there. We're talking Windows, Mac OS, Android, even community-run projects like Linux distributions and Valve's SteamOS for gaming. This touches nearly every phone and computer on the planet. So you might be asking, why on earth would they do this at the OS level? Well, the logic seems sound at first, but as you're about to see, it completely crashes and burns when it meets the real world, creating a whole new mess of problems.
So here's the crazy part. The gap between the idea and the reality. On the one hand, the sales pitch sounds great, right? Verify your age just one time with your OS, and then it just tells apps, yep, they're an adult, or nope, they're a minor. You don't have to upload your driver's license to 100 different apps. But the reality is, well, it's a disaster. It assumes every device has only one user, which is just not true. It creates an impossible situation for open source projects, and maybe worst of all, it builds this permanent infrastructure for verification that, can easily be used for a lot more than just age checks down the road.
There's that old saying, locks keep honest people out, and it just fits perfectly here. These laws create huge burdens for regular, law-abiding users and developers. But the people who are actually determined to get around the rules, they'll find a way. They always do. At the end of the day, that's what this is. It's security theater. It gives the appearance of solving a problem, making everyone feel safer, but the actual underlying issues, they're not even being touched. For any of this to actually work, it depends on what we call a chain of trust. You have to trust the user, you have to trust the operating system, and you have to trust that the data is being protected. But as we're about to see, every single link in that chain is just incredibly weak. So let's start at the beginning, the user. This whole system relies on a declared age. And what's a determined teenager going to do? They're going to lie. They'll just punch in their parent's birthday. The entire system can fall apart at the very first step. Okay, but what about the OS? Surely that's secure, right? Well, anyone who's a little bit tech-savvy can root their Android phone or jailbreak their iPhone. It's basically like getting the master key to your own device. And once you have that kind of control, you can just tell the operating system to report whatever age you want to the API. It's trivial to bypass. And then we get to the data itself. What you've just done is create a centralized system that links an age bracket to a specific device. That is a massive, juicy target. It's a goldmine for advertisers, a super tempting target for government subpoenas, and of course, a huge prize for hackers. And this is where the real-world harm starts to kick in, especially when these laws demand actual government IDs. Just look at these numbers. You've got 15 million Americans without a driver's license, millions more without any government photo ID at all, and a staggering 34.5 million people whose ID doesn't even match their current info. You're talking about locking huge numbers of people, especially low-income folks, minorities, and transgender people, out of digital life. So far, we've been talking about software, about code, but what if I told you the problem goes deeper? I mean, much deeper. It goes all the way down to the silicon, to the actual chips inside our computers. So let me introduce you to the Intel Management Engine. The easiest way to think about this is that it's a secret little computer living inside your main computer's CPU. It runs completely separate from your operating system. It has full access to everything. It can even use your network when your computer is supposedly off. And the craziest part, the code is completely secret and you cannot turn it off. It's a total breakdown of user control. This kind of deep-level control brings up all those classic dystopian nightmares. You've got Orwell's vision of state control through fear, and then you've got Huxley's vision of corporate control through convenience and pleasure. The wild thing is, we didn't get one or the other. We kind of got both. And this quote just nails it. It's the perfect summary. We have Orwell's surveillance architecture, that all-seeing eye, but it was delivered with Huxley's shiny wrapping paper. We invited it into our homes because it was convenient, because it played our favorite songs, because it offered us loyalty points. Okay, this gets a little deep, but it's such a crucial idea in computer science. It's called reflections on trusting trust. The basic idea is you can't be sure a system is secure if you're using tools from that same system to check it. Think about it. A compromised tool can lie to you. It can hide a backdoor so well that even looking at the source code won't help because the tool that builds the code is the thing that's compromised. So is it all doom and gloom? Well, not exactly. In the face of all this, there's a completely different way of building technology that offers a really powerful alternative: the world of free and open source software, or FOSS. And the difference in philosophy is just night and day. Corporate software, it's usually a black box. You can't see inside, and it's controlled by one company that a government can lean on. FOSS, on the other hand, is built out in the open. Anyone can look at the code, and because it's built by a distributed community, there's no single person to pressure or control. And this isn't just theory, we're seeing it happen. When Graphene OS was faced with these laws, they just said no. Projects like Debian don't have a CEO you can send a legal threat to. And we're even seeing movements like RISC-V and Talos-2, trying to build open, trustworthy hardware, all the way down to the chip design. Now, I know a lot of this might seem pretty abstract. We're talking about code, trust, and philosophy. But the stakes here could not be higher. These digital problems don't just stay digital. They bleed out into the real world with devastating physical consequences. Stuxnet was the wake-up call. It was a piece of malware that didn't just steal data. It crossed over into the physical world. It secretly got into industrial systems and made centrifuges spin themselves to death, literally tearing them apart. And the whole time, it was lying to the human operators, showing them screens that said everything was perfectly fine. It weaponized the gap between reality and what the computers said was reality. And if you think that's just some far-off nation-state stuff, think again. The nightmare scenario is already here. In 2021, a hacker broke into a water treatment plant in Florida and tried to crank up the lie in the water supply by 100 times. The only reason it was stopped was because an operator just happened to see his mouse cursor moving on its own. And that leaves us with this final, really unsettling question. When the very systems we count on to tell us what's going on, from our phones to our power grids, can't be fully trusted, how do we know what's real anymore?
So you probably think the computer or like the smartphone you bought belongs entirely to you, right?
Right. I mean, you'd think so.
Exactly. You paid for it. It sits on your desk. You're the one setting the passwords. But, well, today we are going to look at why that might actually be a complete illusion.
Yeah, it's a huge illusion.
It really is. We are doing a deep dive into this incredibly comprehensive document called Lawful Access or Orwell. And our mission here is to unpack the hidden infrastructure of digital surveillance, privacy, and trust. We're exploring how these, seemingly well-intentioned technological laws are quietly reshaping everything, down to the actual silicon in our devices.
Yeah, and it strips away our privacy and even threatens our public physical safety, which is wild.
It is wild. So where do we even start with this?
Well, the core tension here is something you, the listener, probably interact with every single day without even realizing it. Like, as a user, you're constantly being asked to accept these new digital locks.
Oh, yeah. Constantly.
Right. Verification systems, monitoring tools, all under this promise that they're just there to keep you safe. But the reality of technology is that the architecture of control almost always outlasts the original rationale that created it.
Like it sticks around forever.
Exactly. You build a system to catch a bad guy today, and tomorrow that exact same system is just, well, it's just a permanent fixture of your digital life.
Okay, let's unpack this because we're seeing a massive wave of legislation hitting right now. Let's start with operating systems.
Yeah, the OS level.
Right. So California has this Digital Age Assurance Act, AB 2043, which takes effect in 2027. And it mandates that every OS provider has to collect age information when you set up an account.
Which sounds simple, but it's not.
No, not at all. And then they have to transmit that age to app developers in real time. And this isn't just Apple or Windows. Like, the legal definition actually pulls in Linux distributions.
Oh.
And even Valve's SteamOS for gaming consoles. It's massive. And it's not just California. Brazil is pushing similar rules, and they're threatening fines of like $9.5 million if providers don't comply.
Yeah, and the underlying logic is, I mean, it's easy to understand why lawmakers want this. They're looking at a fundamentally messy internet,
Right,
right?
Humphrey?
Right now, every single app, forum, website, they're all demanding to scan your face or like collect a photo of your passport just to verify you're old enough to be there.
Which is a privacy nightmare on its own.
It's a fragmented privacy nightmare. So the concept they have is, well, why not verify a user's age once, centrally, at the operating system level?
Okay, I see where they're going with that.
Right. The OS categorizes you into a bracket, say adult or under 13. And when an app needs to know, the OS communicates through an API.
So how does that API actually work in this context?
Think of the API like a digital waiter. The app asks the waiter for your age status. The waiter goes to the kitchen, which is your operating system, and comes back with a simple thumbs up or thumbs down. The app never gets your actual birth date or your ID.
Conceptually, I get it. I mean, having one bouncer check your ID is obviously better than 50 bouncers at every single door.
Exactly.
But the mechanics of how this got passed are just wild. The source material notes that Meta actually spent $26.3 million lobbying for this.
Oh, of course they did.
Right. To shift the entire compliance burden away from social media platforms, the places actually hosting the content, and push it onto the operating system providers.
Yeah, it's a brilliant way to pass the buck.
It totally is. So we end up with this law drafted to force the OS to be the universal bouncer. It's like passing a law requiring the manufacturer of your front door to check the ID of everyone who walks through it, instead of having the bouncer check IDs inside the club.
That's a great analogy. And that front door, it's incredibly easy to bypass. Oh, yeah. The whole framework assumes a deeply flawed model of how computers actually work. It assumes one person per device.
Which, if you have a family iPad.
Exactly. Families share tablets all the time. It also assumes every OS has a single, accountable corporate vendor. It completely ignores the global, decentralized, open source community.
Right. Who do you sue if Linux doesn't comply?
You can't. Practically speaking, a teenager can bypass this entire multi-million-dollar legal apparatus in like 4 seconds.
Just by lying about their birthday.
Yep. Just typing in their parent's birth date during setup. Or if someone is slightly more technical, they can just run a virtual machine.
Which is like a computer simulated inside a computer.
Exactly. And they just program it to tell that API waiter whatever the app wants to hear. It is pure security theater.
But the stakes are way higher than just a teenager sneaking onto a gaming forum.
Yeah.
Because while the California model just asks you to declare an age, other platforms demand hard proof.
Right, the biometric stuff.
Yeah, look at Discord. They rolled out a system where users were suddenly classified as teenagers by default. And to prove otherwise, you had to upload a government ID photo or, like, submit to a biometric face scan.
Which is terrifying.
It gets worse. Just 4 months before they went global with that, hackers breached Discord's third-party age verification vendor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The attacker sat in that system for 58 hours and exposed 70,000 government ID photos.
See, this is a critical point for you, the listener, to internalize here. When your password is stolen in a breach, you can just reset it, right?
Yeah, takes 2 seconds.
When your credit card is skimmed, you call the bank, you freeze it, they send a new one. But you cannot change your face.
No.
You cannot easily change your social security number or your government identity. Biometric and government data, once it's stolen, it's compromised forever.
Forever.
These laws aren't just creating temporary checks. They are constructing a permanent, high-value identity infrastructure that rigidly links your real physical face to your digital activity.
And it essentially locks vulnerable populations out of the digital world entirely. Like, the source pulls these numbers. There are 15 million adults in the U.S. who simply do not have a driver's license.
Wow, 15 million.
Yeah, and 34.5 million don't have an ID that matches their current name and address. Plus, 43% of transgender Americans lack an ID that reflects their correct name or gender.
That's a massive portion of the population.
It is. If you mandate strict ID gates just to access a web browser or a chat app, you are essentially erasing millions of people from the digital public square.
Which really highlights the classic surveillance ratchet.
What do you mean by that?
So you use child safety, which is, a universally popular cause.
Of course, nobody is against child safety.
Right. You use that as the justification justification to build an invasive tracking infrastructure. But once that data pathway exists, once the AKI is standardizing everyone's identity, it becomes this irresistible target.
Right.
It gets quietly monetized by data brokers, gets subpoenaed by law enforcement, or, as we saw with Discord, it just gets breached by hackers.
And if building a universal ID checker into our basic software seems like a massive overreach today, it's actually just the latest chapter in a very, very long, quiet campaign.
Oh, absolutely.
We are talking about a 30-year trajectory of governments demanding built-in access to our networks. And it's a fascinating philosophical shift. Like, George Orwell's vision of the future was top-down fear, right? Cameras forced into our homes by an authoritarian state.
The classic 1984 scenario.
Exactly. But Aldous Huxley and modern scholars like Shoshana Zuboff, she's the one who coined surveillance capitalism, they saw it completely differently. They argued we would actively invite the surveillance in.
Yeah, we literally finance our own monitoring. We buy smart speakers that listen to our conversations. We install internet-connected cameras inside our living rooms.
And we pay a subscription for it.
We pay monthly fees to let massive corporations harvest our daily routines. The state didn't have to kick the door down and install a telescreen. They just waited for private industry to build a panopticon for profit, and then they just asked for the data.
But wait, when the government does mandate access, aren't there legal protections? Like, I'm thinking of FALIA, the Communications Assistance for Law Enforcement Act from back in 1994.
CLA is the classic example.
They forced telecom companies to build wiretap capabilities directly into the network switches. But they still need a judge to sign a warrant to use them, right? Doesn't that procedural hurdle protect us?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, that argument assumes technical infrastructure cares about human laws.
Right.
And doors do not care about authorization. They only care if you have the key.
That's a great way to put it.
Once you engineer a lawful intercept capability into a system's core design, you have permanently altered its security model. You have intentionally created a vulnerability.
So the warrant is just...
A warrant is just a social control. It's a piece of paper. And social controls are profoundly weaker than technical access.
Okay, the Greek wiretapping scandal from 2004 perfectly illustrates this.
Oh, this story is wild.
It is. So Vodafone Greece had these Ericsson network switches, right? And they included this legally mandated wiretap infrastructure.
Built right in.
Exactly. And someone still unauthorized and entirely unknown managed to hijack that built-in capability. They didn't have to hack the whole network from scratch.
They just picked the lock on the back door the government already mandated.
Yes. And they tapped over 100 senior government officials, including the prime minister, for an entire year.
Because the back door functioned flawlessly. It did exactly what it was engineered to do. The only problem was that the wrong person was holding the key.
Right.
And when intelligence agencies and lawmakers hit a wall with these legal front doors, they don't just give up.
No, they dig deeper.
Exactly. They shift their focus downward. They stop trying to legislate the network, and they start compromising the supply chain, the open source tools, and even the physical hardware.
Which begs the question, if the networks and the commercial operating systems are compromised, why don't we just build our own secure tools?
Like FOSS.
Yeah, use free and open source software, FOSS, to bypass the surveillance entirely. Like, the document mentions groups like Graphene OS, which makes a privacy-focused mobile operating system. They simply refuse to comply with these age verification laws. And because they are a distributed community of volunteers all over the world, a government can't exactly serve a subpoena on them.
Right. Open source communities are incredibly resilient against legal threats.
Yeah.
But software doesn't just float in the ether, you know?
It needs a computer.
It has to run on physical hardware.
Yeah.
And running secure, free software on compromised silicon is it's like running a free press on printing presses rigged by the government.
Oh, wow.
Hardware is the ultimate choke point.
Okay, let's talk about the Intel Management Engine then, because this totally blew my mind.
It is wild.
It's essentially a closed, unauditable, secret second computer operating inside your actual computer.
Yeah.
So to understand this, think of your computer's privilege levels like a highly secure corporate building.
Okay, I like this.
Ring 3 is the lobby, where your basic apps run.
Sure.
Ring 0 is the executive floor that's your operating system, with the power to control the hardware.
Right. Windows or Mac-O?
Exactly. But the Intel Management Engine operates at what they call Ring -1.
-1.
It's an invisible subterranean bunker that the executives in Ring 0 don't even know exists.
And it has its own dedicated microprocessor, its own memory, and its own network stack.
Wait, really? Its own network stack?
Yes, that means it can send and receive data over the internet even when your computer is technically powered off.
As long as it's plugged in.
Once it's plugged into the wall, yeah. And it has been embedded in virtually every Intel machine since 2008.
And you can't turn it off.
You, the owner of the computer, cannot disable it because it operates entirely below your operating system. If it gets compromised, your antivirus or system logs wouldn't register a single anomaly. You literally cannot audit what you cannot see.
Even if you try to escape to beloved hobbyist hardware, like an older Raspberry Pi, you still hit a wall.
Yeah, the boot sequence.
Right. When you power one of those on, the CPU isn't even the first thing to wake up. The closed Broadcom GPU firmware boots first. It's a proprietary binary blob.
Just opaque machine code.
Exactly. Meaning nobody outside the company can read it. And that unauditable blob acts as the root of trust for the entire system before your secure open source operating system even loads.
Now, there is a push toward RICV.
What's that?
It's an open instruction set architecture. It basically means the foundational design of the processor is open to the public, so no single corporation can force a secret management engine into the blueprint.
Oh, so that solves it.
Well, no, because even with an open processor, the physical chips that handle your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth almost universally require closed proprietary firmware blobs to function.
No, right.
As of today, there is no consumer-accessible device that is fully open and auditable from the silicon all the way up to the software.
But let's say you somehow do secure the hardware. You still have to trust the open source software you're running on it? And that brings us to the XE backdoor from early 2024, which shows exactly how vulnerable even transparent code can be.
Oh, the JIT75 hack.
Yes. Let's walk through how this happened, because it's terrifying. XE is this widely used data compression tool baked into most Linux systems. Sometime in 2021, a user going by the name JIT75 shows up. But they don't just hack the system. They spend 2 entire years executing a slow-burn social engineering campaign.
It's psychological warfare, really. They used sock puppet accounts, basically fake identities they controlled, to constantly complain on the message boards about how slow updates were being released.
Right, stressing out the maintainer.
Exactly. They deliberately pressured and harassed the original exhausted volunteer maintainer until he finally caved and handed over control of the project to JIT75.
After they spend years making genuinely helpful, legitimate contributions to build trust.
Yes, all to build trust within the community.
All of that. A multi-year-long con
Yeah.
just to slip in a nearly invisible vulnerability. And they targeted Linux SSH authentication.
Which is huge.
Right, SSH is essentially the secure tunnel that system administrators use to remotely log into and control servers over the internet. JIT75 manipulated the code so that anyone holding a specific digital key could bypass the password prompt entirely.
And take total control.
Total control of millions of servers worldwide. And here's the crazy part. It wasn't caught by a massive cybersecurity audit.
No.
It was caught completely by accident because one Microsoft engineer noticed a tiny 500 millisecond delay in his system's processing speed during a routine test.
Half a second. That near miss completely shatters the myth that open source code is inherently safe just because anyone can read it.
Totally.
It proves that exploiting global infrastructure is as much a psychological operation as it is a technical one, but it goes even deeper than that.
How so?
This whole thing echoes a legendary 1984 paper by computer scientist Ken Thompson. It's called Reflections on Trusting Trust.
Oh, I read this part. This concept is incredibly meta.
It is. It proves a concept that still keeps security researchers awake at night.
So Thompson asked, how do you hide a backdoor so well that nobody reading the code can ever find it? And his answer was to hack the compiler.
Yes.
For those who don't know, the compiler is the tool that translates the human-readable code you write into the ones and zeros the machine actually understands.
Right, it's the translator.
Thompson figured out how to teach the compiler to recognize when it was translating the system's login program and automatically inject a backdoor that lets anyone log in.
But if someone audits the compiler's code, they would see the instructions to inject the backdoor, right?
You would think so.
So Thompson took it a step further. He taught the compiler to recognize when it was compiling itself and to inject the malicious backdoor generating logic into the new compiler.
Wait, so...
Once he compiled it once, he completely deleted the malicious instructions from the human-readable source code.
Oh my God, so the source code is perfectly clean.
Completely clean.
You can read every line of it and find absolutely nothing wrong. But the moment you use the compromised compiler to build the program, The back door is magically reinserted by the machine.
Yes. The malicious code exists nowhere except in the compiled binary in the machine's memory. It's literally a ghost.
That is deeply unsettling.
And that is exactly why blind trust in opaque systems is so catastrophic.
Wow.
Whether it's a hidden management engine in the silicon, a socially engineered maintainer like we saw with ICSI, or a corrupted compiler, the foundation we are building our digital lives on is fundamentally fragile.
Right.
And when the entire globe relies on the exact same fragile systems, that danger scales exponentially. We enter the trap of monoculture.
And monoculture is what gave us the largest IT outage in human history in July 2024.
Oh, the CrowdStrike disaster.
Yes, let's look at the mechanics of this because it ties everything together. CrowdStrike makes a security tool called Falcon, designed to stop cyber attacks. To do its job, Falcon runs as a kernel mode driver. Going back to our building metaphor, it doesn't just operate in the lobby. It has absolute, unrestricted access to the Ring 0 executive floor of the Windows operating system. It have no sandbox, no safety net.
So when CrowdStrike pushed out a routine update containing a tiny logic error, the software didn't just crash itself.
Yeah.
It violently pulled the entire Windows kernel down with it. We saw 8.5 million blue screens of death cascade across the globe.
Literally grounding airlines.
Flights were grounded, emergency 911 dispatch centers went dark, and hospital staff couldn't access life-saving patient records.
And it wasn't even an attack.
No. It wasn't a malicious nation-state attack. It was a poorly tested file from a company we paid to keep us secure. And their CEO's initial apology to some partners was like a $10 Uber Eats gift card.
Which is just insulting. We accept this kind of digital monoculture because it's convenient to have one standard system.
Yeah.
But standardizing our defense is like giving every house, hospital, and bank in the world the exact same lock. One master key, or in the case of CrowdStrike, one jammed lock takes down civilization. And the hypocrisy here is staggering. Intelligence agencies demand we accept these fragile, backdoor-ready systems, but they refuse to use them themselves. The sources refer to this as the goose and gander problem.
Yeah, agencies like the NSA mandate these lawful access vulnerabilities in consumer technology, arguing that backdoors are perfectly safe if managed properly.
Right.
But they absolutely do not trust those systems for their own work. They mandate highly secure, custom-built hardware for themselves, things that meet strict commercial solutions for classified standards, like Digister Citadel drives.
Of course they do.
Furthermore, when they need to infiltrate a target, they don't rely on the commercial spyware they publicly try to regulate. They develop their own proprietary, heavily guarded malware platforms like the CIO's Hive framework.
So they intentionally force vulnerabilities into the tools you and I use while pulling up the drawbridge to secure their own operations in a gilded fortress.
Exactly.
And this isn't just an abstract debate about someone reading your emails. We are talking about SCADA systems.
Yeah, the industrial stuff.
Right, the physical industrial control systems that run power grids, oil pipelines, and municipal water filtration plants.
And the watershed moment for this was Stuxnet. It proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that digital code can cause catastrophic physical destruction.
For those who don't know, what was Stuxnet?
It was a highly sophisticated piece of malware engineered specifically to destroy the centrifuges at an Iranian nuclear facility.
Wow.
It worked by subtly manipulating the rotation speeds of the motors, pushing them past their physical breaking points.
But the genius, and really the horror, of Stuxnet was how it hid itself.
Right.
It spoofed the human-machine interface. The operators in the control room were staring at their monitors, seeing completely normal pressure and speed readings, completely unaware that the physical machinery in the next room was literally tearing itself to pieces.
Stuxnet crossed the Rubicon. It proved physical infrastructure could be weaponized via software. And the weapon didn't stay contained.
It got out.
It escaped into the wild, providing a blueprint for hackers everywhere. We've even seen generic off-the-shelf malware make its way onto the International Space Station because an astronaut plugged in an infected USB drive.
On the space station.
Yes. Once you prove a vector of attack is possible, the barrier to entry just plummets.
Which brings the threat right to our front doors.
Yeah.
In early 2021, an attacker targeted a water treatment plant in Oldsmar, Florida.
Oh, this one is terrifying.
It really is. An operator was sitting at his desk, and suddenly, he watched his mouse cursor start moving across the screen entirely on its own.
Just moving by itself.
Yeah. The attacker had gained access through a basic, poorly secured remote desktop application. And the operator watched as the invisible intruder navigated the menus and cranked the sodium hydroxide, which is lying in the city's water supply, to 100 times the normal, safe level.
Wow.
That is caustic enough to severely burn anyone drinking it.
And the only reason a mass casualty event was averted was because a human being happened to be looking at the monitor at the exact right second to manually reverse the command. Just sheer luck.
Exactly. And back in 2011, hackers in Springfield, Illinois, actually succeeded in destroying a water pump by remotely cycling it on and off until it burned out.
Jeez.
These aren't highly sophisticated multi-million-dollar zero-day exploits. They are attacks leveraging default passwords, shared credentials, and industrial control systems hooked directly up to the public internet.
Right.
The hospitals you rely on, the water you drink, and the flights you take are running on a fragile house of cards built on opaque hardware and unauditable code.
Okay, let's take a breath and retrace the journey we've taken today.
It's been a lot.
It really has. We started by looking at how laws like California's AB 1043 try to turn our operating systems into universal bouncers, threatening to lock millions of vulnerable people out of the digital world. We saw how this stems from a 30-year history of wiretap laws that treat technical backdoors as simple legal tools.
Right.
We ventured into the secret, invisible layers of our hardware, from the Intel management engine down to the mind-bending logic of a corrupted compiler.
The Ken Thompson ghost. Exactly. And we finally arrived at the terrifying physical reality of this monoculture, where a single broken update grounds global flights and an unsecured connection lets a hacker poison a city's water supply.
And as we look for a way out of this, whether it's adopting open source hardware like RICV or painstakingly verifying the code we use, we hit a profoundly Orwellian paradox.
What's that?
Right now, achieving genuine privacy and security requires immense technical sophistication, deep resources, and a lot of spare time to navigate these complex ecosystems.
Which most people don't have.
Exactly. And that raises a deeply unsettling question for you, the listener, to consider. If true digital privacy and physical safety become luxury goods, a form of elite privilege available only to the tech-savvy or the wealthy, what happens to the fundamental right to privacy for everyone else?
Wow, that is a brilliant, heavy thought to leave on. You might have assumed the computer sitting on your desk answers only to you. But as we've explored today, from the silicon up to the software, it's answering to a lot of other masters. Keep questioning the systems you trust. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.